really excited to chat with you, Lexi, because I think that you're just, what don't you do, first of all? But also I think that this is a really good example of all that you're going to do in the future. This is such a great platform for you. I think this is going to change a lot of lives. And I'm really excited to hear more about your process, what you hope people gain from it, who you are now that you're adding author to your title. And I just want to start first with, I think it's important for us to hear your words. So I want to open with you giving us an excerpt from the book. And before you start, tell us why you chose this one.
Yeah. So the excerpt that I'm getting ready to read right now is Jordyn's first day of school. Specifically, why I chose this one is that you soon see that when Jordyn enters the school, everyone knows her, but she doesn't know everyone else. So there's been a lot of talk about her arrival before she even gets there. You're Jordyn, right? In my next 3 classes, I hear this half a dozen times. Either that or, so you're Jordyn. Though I know for a fact that Caleb and Scarlett are the only 2 humans I've uttered my name to since I stepped foot in this building. Somehow, many more people are starting to know who I am. Eyes follow me in the halls, and it seems like the other kids are glancing over their shoulders at me, whispering with their friends while looking in my direction. Then there are ones who look down their nose at me, who give me a wide berth. The students like Scarlett who rebuff my attempts at friendliness. The lack of introductions I get to make are reminders of Mila's text and what Caleb said about gossip. But I still don't get it. I haven't been here long enough to be the subject of rumors, and even if I had been a student here last year, we haven't even gotten through a full day of school yet. Fear about what it could all mean makes my hands go clammy. So I keep rubbing them down my thighs and shoving them deep into my pockets. The next time I see Caleb, I say, "Yo, how does everyone know me?" Caleb laughs and shrugs. Word travels fast when you're the new kid, I guess. This seems like more than just being new, I tell him, looking around nervously. He doesn't seem that worried, just laughs again, acknowledges that it's annoying, but promises that it will all die down, that I'm just a shiny new toy. But I need to know what's going on. Truth be told, I'm a little afraid that I won't like whatever I find out. The answer doesn't come until I finally get the guts to ask someone else about it in my class. "You're Jordyn, right?" A curvy girl with dark wavy hair asks as soon as I walk into physics, before I even have the chance to let my bag slide off of my shoulder. Yeah, I say. That's me, but I glance around and step closer before I whisper. "How does everyone already know my name?" The girl lowers her voice too. "Oh, everyone has been talking about you, Jordyn Jones. The newbie from private school. You're way shorter than I thought you'd be, though. Anyway, they've been saying you're not talking to anyone because you think that you're better than us. But I was like, chill, she's new. She could just be nervous." I smile, appreciating her kindness, though I'm unnerved that she even knows more than just my name. Hartwell Academy is home to the kids of diplomats and senators, big-time lobbyists, journalists, and other politicians who all work on Capitol Hill. It doesn't surprise me that people who know that I went there might think I'm stuck up. It's definitely more the nervousness thing than anything, I say. But I still don't get it. "How do you know that I went to private school?" "Oh," she says, sounding surprised. "Caleb didn't tell you?" The skin on the back of my neck prickles. "You're friends with Caleb?" I ask. "Yeah, hi. I'm Mila. I thought he would have told you." "Told me what?" I swallow hard, hoping my instinct about Caleb wasn't wrong. Mila makes an easy smile and touches my arm. A dimple pops into her left cheek. "I didn't mean to freak you out. Just thought he would have told you about Tomcat Tea. It's our school's podcast. Someone started it during lockdown, and it got super popular because we were all bored AF at home doing virtual school." She faux gags. "Whoever runs it set up this email address where people can send in tips and gossip, and they put it all into a weekly show. Maybe someone sent in a tip about you."
Has anybody here experienced being the new person at school, or the subject of gossip at school? I think that what I love about this book is that it's exploring how people have preconceived notions. how you can be a fish out of water, hoping that you're just in a school of fish that really accept you, and you're having the absolute opposite reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Louder Than Words has been called the new age gossip girl. So I want to know, to you, does that ring true? How you feel about that comparison? And also, why was the harmful nature of gossip something that you wanted to explore?
I think that the comparison of, Louder Than Words and Gossip Girl is honestly spot on. When we originally decided that we wanted it to be a podcast and center media as almost another character in the story, specifically, I think it also just shows that social media and the power of taking things and twisting them has only grown within the past couple of years. Because Gossip Girl came out when I was younger. And so I think right now, especially with Gen Zers, social media becoming such a thing, I've seen tea pages, I've seen tea podcasts where people spill secrets. And I think sometimes, while it's in fun nature, and I think that over the past couple of years, as a society, people have gotten more comfortable to believe that they have access to people that they don't know.
Yes.
I think that it's important to show that while it can be positive and it can be for enjoyment, it can be for fun, but it can also be harmful, especially to people's mental health. And we're talking about Gen Zers, young people who are still in schools trying to figure themselves out. It's a lot of pressure to navigate it. It's something that I'm still trying to navigate. And so I kind of wanted almost this to serve as a guidebook for people that are going through it, but also people that are maybe mishandling social media and don't necessarily know in the moment that they are.
Have you developed tools that you can maybe share with us as to how you do navigate it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest thing that I've learned over the past couple of years, and I feel like also self-discovery while writing this book, just like Jordyn, I am someone who definitely consider myself to be worried about how other people perceive me.
It's so easy.
And it's really easy to internalize, especially with what we do as artists. Everything is so public. People feel like they know you, or they're entitled to their own opinions about you and your life. And it's really easy to let that get to you. But for me, it's really just understanding that what somebody else's perception of you, especially if they don't know you, has more to do with themselves and what they're actively going through internally. Whether or not they're taking out on you what they experienced at home that morning or what they went through last night. And I think that especially with all these characters, you get to see that. I like the fact that we're able to see their personal lives at home, because we also understand that that's why they do the things that they do. They treat people the way that they do, and they show up the way that they do.
Well, what I'm hearing is that it sounds like you've developed tools to give people a lot of grace, and I think, and give yourself grace for how you are digesting what's being thrown at you. And I think Jordyn does the same thing in the book. So I feel like a character almost in the book is activism. And I want to know why it was important for you to incorporate activism in such a monumental way in the book.
Well, when I first came up with this concept, it was 2020, and we all know what the world was looking like at that time. Ever since I was younger, and then also just growing up in DC, I've always been interested in activism and politics. And I think that because of the current state of the world, especially when I first started writing it, I would be doing an injustice to what the world actually looked like by not adding that in there. It didn't need to be as blatant or in your face, but I do think that it was relevant to the times that we were actively going through. With Jordyn and her friends, what I love about it, yes, activism is a piece of it, but I like integrating art through activism, which has been such a thing historically for generations. I like the fact that these young kids are actively finding their voices through their passions. They're all artists in some way, shape, or form. And I think that especially in the conversation of activism right now, especially with Gen Zers, it's really interesting to see how people are using social media or their passions to be able to get their words out and to get what they're passionate about, to get what they are passionate about out into the world. And I think that the book specifically being called Louder Than Words ties into that, making sure that your actions are speaking louder than words, especially when it comes to activism. Are you, making sure that you're properly just that you're probably learning about all the things that you're posting about, or that you're donating, or that you're showing up even when other people can't see it. And so for Jordyn and her friends, it was their time to do so. And I'm really glad that we added that into the book because it felt so relevant to what we're all going through right now.
Yeah, I also think it's their age. I think it's, you know, it's the time when you were beginning to figure out what do you want to be an activist about? How do you feel about things? You know, what are your feelings about things that are going on in the world, and how do you want to express it? And you know, with them all being artists, I think that's what they choose. And so I want to know how do you describe the role in which art plays in the story?
Honestly, I would consider art as another character as well, because when you first meet all of these characters, art is attached to their identity in some way, shape, or form. Jordyn is a visual artist. Her friend Anton is a photographer. Her other friend Caleb is a graphic designer. So I really wanted to also kind of reflect, for me, just what my friend group looked like at the time, and still does. I'm surrounded by so many artists, and I think that right now with Gen Zers, you see them expressing themselves through art, through different forms of media, whether it's content creation or it's painting or it's whatever. And so I think that for me specifically, it also just shows like the power of movements and the power that art plays in these movements that we have looked up to for so long, and Gen Z is kind of following in that, in those footsteps. And so for me, I just really wanted to make sure that I integrated art through activism, and Ashley as well, Ashley Woodfolk, who's another co-author of the book. We wanted to make sure that we drove that point home that, you know, Gen Zers right now, they're kind of reshaping the way in which we look at activism, and showing how you can make sure that your actions speak louder than words through your passions and through other things as well.
Social media. We love it, we hate it, it stresses us out. Excuse me. I know that social media has the starkest effect on teenagers. You can be either inspired by it, you can be deterred by it, you can be bullied by it. There's so many different ways in which social media affects specifically teens. And so I want to know your thoughts about specifically how social media affects teen girls, because I think although it affects teens, I think it affects teen girls in a very specific way, some of which is kind of explored throughout the book too. So one, what are your thoughts about how it affects teen girls? And do you have any hopes or wishes of how it could be better?
Social media, I always say there are negative and positive effects to it, but I definitely wish that I kind of grew up in a generation without it. Being a young woman trying to just navigate life and making mistakes and just coming into yourself. It's really hard when you're actively like opening up apps and you see a trend that you have to follow, or this, or It Girl Core, it's just so much, and it feels really overwhelming at times. And it's really easy on social media to feel like you're not doing enough, which can be really damaging to your mental health when you're actively still trying to figure out who you are. And so for me, I think that I've always been a big advocate of taking like social media breaks, of making sure that you're putting your mental health first and that you're not listening to social media, because oftentimes what you see is a facade. I like to always say about social media, it's like, you know, when you see like a duck floating on water, like they seem really calm and serene, but when you go underneath the surface, they're anxiously trying to stay afloat. And I believe that that's what social media is. Everybody is putting out a picture where they're calm.
Their best versions.
Exactly, where they feel like they have everything together. But when you go underneath the surface, everybody is anxiously trying to maintain this image like everything is perfect. And so I think that by adding also those components into this book, I really just want to continuously advocate for young women, especially like, don't listen to the outside noise. Don't listen to what social media tells you you should be or you should do. Focus on yourself and understand that your first instincts, your second instinct, your third instinct will always be enough, regardless of what other people say.
And I think surrounding yourself with good people is the best way to tackle it.
Mm-hmm.
Really having a good friend circle, support of family and friends. Lex, you said that, excuse me, you wish you had a story like this when you were growing up. And that really resonated with me because I always try to create what I want because I feel like that's when it's the most authentic and that's when it resonates with people the most.
Yeah.
So how would this book have helped you in your journey to adulthood?
Ooh, this book would have helped my journey into adulthood. I think, it's really interesting because there were a lot of like self-reflections that I was having after I read the book. And I feel like for me, the biggest one is just understanding like that it is okay to make mistakes and fall down.
It's a part of life.
It's a part of life.
It might be the most important part of life.
Yes.
Is to make mistakes, learn from them, grow.
Absolutely.
And be better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even in the midst of it, it's so easy to focus on what's happening in the present moment and feel like, it's the end of the world, but also believing that, redemption does come. It may not come in that moment, but it'll come eventually.
Yes.
And there's so much more to look forward to in life rather than just that one tiny thing that happened. And I think for me, growing up, it was something that I fixated on, something that I still sometimes find myself fixating on because I'm only 20. And I've learned also just like to give myself grace to know that like my healing journey is not going to end at a certain point. I'm always going to keep growing and keep learning. But if anything, this book helped me understand the areas that I still need to grow in, that I still want to heal in, and just help me understand more of like who I want to be as a person and knowing that what's happening right now in the current and the present is just a tiny piece of a bigger story in the end. And just giving myself that reassurance.
And life is the long game, right? Like you don't have to have everything figured out when you're 15, 16, 20, 36. You're not supposed to have it all figured out. You're supposed to continue to keep learning, to keep striving. Like I have a almost 93-year-old aunt who is living her best. Okay. Yes, she's living her best. She dates. She works out every day. Aunt Babe is living her best life. Right. But I will share with you something that she shared with me is that every time I talk to her, she's learned something else. She has an experience still every day of her life that she still wants to share with me, or that it looks back when she was 60 and it's like, you know what, when I was 60, I probably wouldn't have done. So it never, ever ends. And the goal is that not only do you keep learning, but that you share what you learned. Yeah. So, I want to share with you things that I've learned because I'm older than you, right? Yeah. So if I can help you in any way, I'm going to, pass it forward. Yeah. She's my 93-year-old aunt is going to, give me knowledge and gifts and wisdom. Yeah. So I just want to encourage everybody here that like, as you continue to go through life, don't hold it in, share it, let it out. Somebody will be better for it, for sure. Yeah. Okay, so tell me about how you and Ashley came to collaborate on this. Like, what was the conversation? Did you guys have dinner? And we're like, oh my gosh, girl, let's do a book. Like, what happened?
So,
it was a pandemic.
Right,
so maybe
it was a lot going on.
We were virtual doing this?
Yes,
okay.
All virtual.
Okay.
So this started in 2020. I was doing some work through Reese's book club, which is Reese Witherspoon's book club thing. And so that month, the book that they were highlighting was You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson, which is another phenomenal book that you all should read. But the book editor of that book, who is now the current editor of Louder Than Words, Maya Marlette, we started talking, and I jokingly stated, I was like, I would love to write a book. Like, I would love to be an author.
It always starts as a joke. Be careful what you say.
Right. But I was 17 at the time, so I definitely wasn't thinking that she was going to take me seriously. But I was serious, but like putting it in a joke.
Yeah. Like 10 years down the line.
Exactly. But when she was down, I was like, oh, okay, let's do this.
So you said, hey, I want to write a book. She was like, great.
Yeah, because I already have the concept.
Got it.
So I had been thinking of Louder Than Words for probably 2 years prior to, but it was something that I like kind of just kept putting off. I was like, all right, this is going to be a future project later on in life. But I had already created the characters at the end of the day, I knew that I wanted to make like a coming of age redemption story that was set in DC and tell a story of a young Black protagonist that wasn't like a stereotype or a trope, that just had the space to be messy and complex and to fall down, but to still get up. And so Maya immediately was like, I'm down. Because I was a first-time author, I thought that it would maybe flow better if I collaborated with someone who just understood that world. Ashley and I, she was probably like third author that I met with. I was doing Zoom interviews with people. But as soon as we met, we instantly clicked. She's also from DC. We found out like that we grew up like 8 minutes down the street from each other. Like literally everything was just aligning. But the biggest thing was she understood the story that I was trying to convey, and she herself could relate to Jordyn, which was really important to me because Jordyn was based off of me. So I wanted to ensure that because there were two people, that it still flowed and it didn't feel choppy, like our writing styles matched. And as soon as we started getting into the process of the outline and fleshing out the characters more, it just understood. I understood more and more why it was such a match to begin with. But actually, Ashley and I just met in person for the first time last week.
Pandemic vibes.
I'm
not surprised at all, actually.
Like literally everything was soon. But it was, the process in general was probably 3.5 years, 2 years of writing and editing. Life was happening. She is an incredible mother of 2. So, and then at the time I was filming Cool Summer. So it was a lot of different things of just making sure that like everything aligned. But once it did, it, you know, magic, I feel like, was created.
What did you like most about the process, and what was the most difficult part of the process for you?
What I loved most about the process was honestly just how much you have to believe in yourself and be confident in your words. I didn't think that writing a book would be easy, but I definitely did not realize that it would be that hard as well. As an actor, you know, you aren't in control of the words that you say. You go on set, you play a character, and then you see it whenever it comes out, and then that's it. But when you are writing something actively, you do have the space to be able to go back and to change things. And for me personally, who's always overthinking, it was a lot of that. It was a lot of doubt that lived in my mind. It was a lot of second guessing myself and my words. And so if anything, I really actually enjoyed pushing myself and believing in myself. I feel like I found my voice and found confidence in my voice, because there were a lot of things that I was unsure about during the process. And there are a lot of authors that will start but don't finish. And so for me, it was just more than anything, like that was the first time where I really felt I was pushing myself to my full extent. So if anything, I love the fact that I really found more confidence in my voice and in my writing and words.
Let me ask you this. When did you know it was done? I always want to know this with authors. Like, how do you know, like, all right, packing it up, this is the final draft. How did you know?
Honestly, our book editor, Maya, I love her, but she was also very she'll tell you exactly how it is. And so there were, which is why it took so long, there were so many different versions and so many different edits. And I knew that within like the last 3 months, when all of like the versions started coming back and there was like 1 note, 2 notes, I was like, oh wait, I think we're there. I think we almost got it. But then I took time to read it right before I finally submitted it, and I don't know, it was just different from all the other times that I had read it. Like I just felt a sense of pride, and I knew that like there was nothing else that I could tell. There was nothing else that I could add to the story. But it was definitely, it took me a while to get there, because like I said, also I had to believe in my writing and my words and able to even submit that final draft.
That's amazing. What does the story teach us about the power of second chances? And to couple that, do you have a personal story of being granted a second chance?
I love that. I think that this story really teaches people the power of second chances. If anything, that it has to be earned. You just don't just get it. There's a lot that goes into redemption and having a second chance. I think that accountability, taking responsibility in your own actions and making sure that your actions are speaking louder than your words, it's a big thing. And I think oftentimes people feel not entitled, but just assume that second chances are going to be granted without actually putting in the work. And you see this young girl, this character who is in every step of the way, you know, I feel like walking the walk and talking the talk, like everything aligns with, you know, everything that she says.
Yeah.
And so as humans, I think that if anything, I want people to take that away. Make sure that you're taking accountability and responsibility for your own actions and how they've affected someone before you think that you can just waltz back into their life. And for me, in terms of redemption and second chances, absolutely. I think that as human beings, we all make mistakes. We all mess up, unintentionally hurt people's feelings, and don't always do the right thing. And if anything, I'm trying to think of like a specific story, but I think just in general from all of those times, why I put, you know, the actions speaking louder than words into the story was because that's what I learned.
Yes.
Was that, you know, I definitely had this one friend where she put me in my place. She was like, girl, but you got to do this and this and this if you want to have this kind of relationship again. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Yeah, I need to show up. I need to be, you know, I need to listen to you. I can't just always be an ego and thinking of me. It's a partnership. Friendships are partnerships. And so for me, if anything, I just really wanted to show that you can't just waltz back into someone's life. You really have to do the work.
You gotta earn it.
Yeah.
I like that you said it has to be earned. Let's hear another excerpt.
Yeah.
It's time.
It's time.
I want to stop talking. I want to hear you talk.
So this next excerpt, we're talking a little bit about Tomcat Tea. So this is the very first episode of the podcast. Hello, fellow students. We're back. Did you miss me? You know how much I missed you. I couldn't be more excited because we have a lot of tea to spill. Last season showed just how messy the people we go to school with can be. So it would be cruel of me not to give you all the sordid details. Let's buckle up for a wild school year. Now let's get into it. Over the summer, the power couple we thought would be together forever, Cassie Taylor and Devon Wheeler, sadly broke up while audibly sobbing at the Smoothie King at the mall. Eyewitness reports say it was, quote, a tough watch. Considering we expected them to be prom king and queen this year, this bumps up Bella Martin's and Luke Haley's chances of winning. If they make it until then, that is. Also, believe it or not, Chance Martinez, who up to now was best known for attempting a backflip in his mascot costume and having the head fly off, went viral over break and has become an internet sensation on TikTok. In case you were lucky enough to miss it, his newfound stardom is from posting thirst traps. The internet really is an interesting place. And for our new students, a special welcome to all of our freshmen. Heads up, High School Musical lied. Have low expectations. Speaking of freshmen, does everyone remember that one girl who suddenly left before sophomore year? Good old Scarlett Fisher. Well, rumor has it she'll be back and gracing the junior hallways this year. You may be asking, why bring up Scarlett? Well, I honestly am a little suspicious of her return myself. The real question is, why didn't she tell anyone she was leaving? And more importantly, why is she coming back? Scarlett isn't the only newcomer to the junior class. A Miss Jordyn Jones will be making her arrival at Edgewood High. Apparently, Jordyn is joining us fresh off of an expulsion. Not to mention, this is her first time in a public school. I guess the princess turned into a frog. Womp womp. But for what reason? What could little Miss Jones do that was so bad her old school expelled her? Don't worry, what's done in the dark always comes to light. And the moment it does, I'll make sure to be the first to let you all know. And finally, for the last segment of this episode, we have everybody's favorite bombshell, where we drop some tea so piping hot that it'll leave you craving the next episode. This week's star is Jasmine Everett. Jasmine, we heard over the summer that you may or may not have had not a boob job or a nose job, but toe shortening surgery. By the looks of her feet in those Gucci slides today, the rumors seem to be true. I guess all those La Cienega Boulevardage jokes really got to her. Either way, you look great, girl. If only everyone had a rich daddy who could magically fix our problems. Now, with that, happy start of a new school year and start of another beautiful season of Tomcat Tea. I'll be back next episode with more tea. Stay tuned and stay messy. Let's go, Tomcats.
Messy, Messy. I want to pivot and talk about where we're from. I want to talk about Washington, D.C.
Whoop, whoop.
Yes. You, me, Ashley, everybody's from the DMV, which I think is great. And I like how we're talking about these places and themes that we're calling them characters in your book. So I can guess why it was important for you to have this set in Washington, D.C. But I want you to really share with us, like, why it's important to rep where you're from in any way that you can, especially as you are creating art. And then how does the city specifically play into the drama of the book?
So for me specifically, if you know me, I'm very proud to be where I'm from. I think that oftentimes, especially when we look at the stories that are being said in DC, it's either surrounding politics
it's
or
scandal.
It's always scandal. Yeah, it's that. And so I wanted to set young kids like in that story, center a young girl where yes, politics and all those things are a part of it, but DC is so much more. There's so much culture, there's so much diversity, so much art, so much richness that just exists in that area, and especially for young Black kids to be able to prosper and to learn more about just their culture and where they come from. I feel like DC is like the perfect place to grow up for that. And so, like I said, I wanted a story that wasn't just about the stereotypical what you see. I think it also ties into telling a story about a young Black protagonist that isn't a stereotype or a trope. I feel like also oftentimes when you see young Black kids in DC, it's not always the best representation, and that is a part of it, but it's not the entirety of it. And so in terms of also just I feel like what DC does to help drive the story forward is exactly that. I think that you are a product of your environment. I think that you're a product of what you see and the people that are around you. And in DC, it is exactly that. When you see a bunch of other kids that are able to be free, able to prosper, able to just stand true in who they are, which I think is exactly what you get when you're from there. At least for me, that's exactly what my school looked like. That's what my community looked like. So it was really just showing that, like the richness of it and the culture of DC. And understanding that, like, you really are a product of your environment. You are a product of, like, the people that you have around you. And so I feel really grateful for the fact that I grew up there. I think that there was no other place that I wanted to set this story in. And it just also representation for young Black kids that are in that area right now, because it's really rare when I was growing up that I saw that. Or like I said, it would be like The Wire, or it would be Scandal, and that's not what my life looked like in DC. So I just wanted, especially like bump up the representation for our home.
Well, I appreciate it. As a girl from DC too, I thank you so much for doing it. I really appreciate it, and I think that it's authentic, and I think that you were able to do it authentically, obviously, because it is your true experience. You know, like I am third or fourth generation Washingtonian. And, you know, something that my dad always talks about is just how, like, you know, growing up, it's so cool growing up in DC because, you know, the museums are free. So, you know, you live in a city where you can hop into museums anytime you want with your friends, and you can learn and you can explore in a way that you can't in really any other city in the country. And so go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was just also going to say it, but I think also, like, specifically, we're talking about art through activism as well. I think that it's so fitting because, especially young kids, we have access to understanding our history and understanding the importance of art and understanding, you know, just how those two things even coming together is such a powerful.
It's at your fingertips.
Exactly.
It's literally in the soil of the city.
Right there.
1000%. So I love it. And again, thank you so much. I want to know a book that inspired you, like a book that inspired you to almost believe in yourself to write louder than words.
For me, the one that's really coming to mind that I loved during 2020 specifically that inspired this book really was The Hate U Give. I remember when I first read it and all the emotions that I felt, and then when I saw the film right after, just what that did for me, especially the state of the world during that time when the book came out. And now, like, it just for me showed that you could tell a story of a young Black female protagonist in that way. That while Star, I believe, this is the character's name, like she wasn't always going through like tough times. She wasn't all, while that was a part of it, it wasn't the totality of her identity. And I loved the way in which Angie Thomas was able to capture that, where she was, you know, speaking up for a friend, getting justice, tying in activism, but also with like coming of age as well, because I love to see the young girl finding herself in the midst of all that adversity, which is so real and so much of, I feel like, especially young Black and brown people were trying to do during when George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all those movements were happening. We were trying to figure out our voices in them while also being kids and growing up. And so for me specifically, understanding that I wanted activism and all of those themes to also be a part of it, Angie Thomas's words just really stuck with me and resonated with me. And I hope that readers that read this book as well kind of walk away feeling those same things.
Do we, and I know as artists, it's annoying to always be kind of asked what's next, but I'm going to ask you. Is this giving a world? Are we in a world? Are we doing a podcast? Are we doing a movie? Are we doing a television show? Like, I mean, what do you, I want to, because here's the thing. I love this called Louder Than Words, but words have power. So I really want you, like in the presence of people who love you and believe in you and are excited to celebrate this accomplishment in your life, like really say aloud what you want for the world of Louder Than Words.
Yeah. So what I want ideally for the words, for the world of Louder Than Words, I would love to see this being turned into a film specifically. I think that it is a really cinematic piece of work, even when you're reading it, not to be biased, but I feel like, you know, as I was writing it, I could like see the characters, I could see Edgewood High, I could see the story existing in real life. And so I feel like that's the first, you know, main thing. And then also Ashley and I have quietly talked about on the side, even just like what another book would look like, following Jordyn's story more, or following Caleb or any one of her other peers and getting to know just a little bit, like a little spinoff. But the main goal right now, I would love to turn this into a film.
Well, I love that you said, when I asked you about the book that inspired you, was The Hate U Give. Yeah. Because we've all seen that movie, right? Yeah. Exactly. So, I mean, clearly your brain is on the right path. And I can totally see this being a really beautiful world and being explored in so many other ways. And I'm looking forward to it.
Putting that out there.
Yes. Okay. So in closing, Lexi, what do you hope readers walk away with? And how do you want your readers to specifically feel after reading The Last Word?
I really want readers to walk away with understanding that regardless of how much you stress yourself out or stress things out to be perfect, perfection doesn't exist. It's more important to focus on your mental health and just the growth and discovery of you being a human being more than anything. I think that if you listen to the outside noise, if you listen to what social media or other people are pressuring you to be, and you make perfection the totality of your identity, a part of who you are and what you do, it can be really damaging even when you make small mistakes. So I think if anything, I just want people to know, like, almost don't stress yourself out. Don't stress to be perfect. Even if you've made mistakes before, you're only 15, 20, 30, 50, whatever. There's 93. Still 93.
She's making mistakes.
There's still time. There's still space for growth. There's still space for reinvention. So just understand that and look forward to the bigger picture, no matter how tough things may be, because in the end, you'll understand why everything works out the way in which it does.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the last word, when people read the last word and close the book, what do you want them to say or feel?
I want them to feel seen, if anything. I think that a big thing that this book touches on is mental health and, you know, trigger warning, but also like suicide attempts and bullying and transphobia and homophobia and all these different things. And I want you to know that, you know, you're seen, that you're heard, your feelings are valid, that everyone goes through this at some point in time in their life. No matter how many times you get knocked down, you deserve to get up. You, for your own self, you should always do that. And so, yeah, I think that we've done a good job of it based off of, you know, so far what people have been saying. But I just really want people to feel seen and to know that they're not alone.
Well, I think that you have definitely accomplished that. And I also want people, I have a want for people. I want people to want more. That's what I want. I want people to close the book and say, I gotta have more in whatever form that is. And it seems like they're gonna get it. So I'm really excited for you. This is a fantastic, major, huge accomplishment. And I can't wait to see what's next.
Thank you, Ashley.
You're welcome, Lexi. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Does anybody have questions? Are you signing books? Yes.
Just when do you like to write? In the morning, in the evening? Like,
I love
when's your
that question.
favorite time?
Honestly, I don't really have a favorite time. I think it's really whenever I feel inspired. My favorite, maybe if anything, my favorite times are after, like coming back in from the house, having like real interactions with other human beings. That's where I get my inspiration from, is just by living my life. So if anything, it's just the most like really when I feel inspired, which happens to be after human interaction.
Hey, Lex.
Hey.
I'm so proud of you. Super proud of you. I have a question. So in going home, I am from DC.
Yes.
Native Washington. When as the city is changing, and it's changing dramatically, if you were to tell the story further, or if you went further in the story, do you think that the landscape of the city now would affect the characters, the story? Of course, I grew up a long time ago. Waiting for you. But in growing up, even with me, because I don't live in DC anymore, but going home, I'm like, I don't even recognize the city. The landscaping, the demographic is very different.
Yeah.
Do you think that that would affect the story going further, in that the kids do look a little bit different now that are in the city, the natives of the city? It's a lot different in the story that we see when we go home.
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like, I don't know if it would necessarily affect or change the characters. I think that when I go home, especially, like, I just learn to adapt. So if anything, I think, I would maybe just want to talk about those things more.
It becomes a character in the story.
Gentrification, I think, would be a major thing to talk about, and the effects that it has, because I think also, to your point, people don't understand in the midst of it how it also affects the natives' childhood, how they grow up, how they come into themselves, what their friends look like, what their schools look like. So if anything, I would really just want to bring more awareness to it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
That would be great.
Anybody else? All right, Lexi, you might be off the hook.
Waiting for the movie.
Right? Can't wait for that premiere. Oh, you have okay, yes.
Well, speaking of the movie, you have your own personal fan cast for the characters. You want to be in it.
Oh, yes.
I do, actually.
Oh.
So not to be biased, but I would definitely want me as Jordyn.
I think that's a great choice. I think it's a great choice. What do you guys think?
Yeah. I could see Joshua Bassett as Caleb, and it's really funny. Alicia, you're gonna but Alicia as Mila. I made a fan cast.
You gotta roll. Yes.
Right, there you go. Forrest Wheeler as Anton, and Jack Champion as Bryce. I did have to make a fan cast for a presentation that we did a couple of days ago.
Gotcha. Okay, I was like, what?
In the back of my mind. But yeah.
I'd love to play a teacher. I could be a young whippersnapper teacher.
Trust me, all my friends are gonna be in it. Everybody's gonna be in it.
Yes.
Scarlett.
Yes.
Right.
That's good. You have a future as a casting director as well.
What up?
What don't you do? Man.
So that's your resume.
Yeah. Come on.
Yes.
Anybody else? All right. You did it.
Oh, thank you guys so
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so proud of you. Anytime, of